Welcome back to Eject Media, where VHS is alive and well, and the shelves are always stocked with strange discoveries. Today we're heading deep into the shadows of the 1970s, a decade when horror broke free of old formulas and wandered into darker, stranger, and more unsettling places. Sure, everyone knows the heavy hitters like The Exorcist and Halloween, but lurking in the aisles of the video store were movies that were quieter, weirder, and sometimes even more disturbing. These weren't the big-name rentals everyone fought over on a Friday night. These were the dusty tapes with faded covers and bizarre artwork, the ones you picked up not knowing what you were about to watch, and often regretting it by the end. From surreal nightmares to forgotten possession films and grim zombie tales, these are the kind of movies that slip through the cracks but still haunt the minds of anyone who stumbled across them on late-night TV or at the bottom shelf of the horror section. So dim the lights, adjust the tracking, and join me as we uncover 10 lesser-known horror films from the 1970s that deserve a second life in your VHS collection. Let's Scare Jessica to Death, 1971. Some horror films rely on monsters, blood, or loud jump scares. Let's Scare Jessica to Death isn't one of them. Instead, it creeps under your skin slowly, leaving you unsure of what's real and what's imagined. The movie follows Jessica, played brilliantly by Zora Lampert, who moves with her husband to a quiet farmhouse in the countryside. She's just come out of a stay in a psychiatric hospital, and this new life is supposed to be a fresh start. But almost immediately, Jessica begins hearing whispers, seeing things she can't explain, and feeling like something or someone is watching her. Soon she crosses paths with a strange young woman who may not be who she seems. Is this newcomer a ghost, a vampire, or just another trick of Jessica's fragile mind? That's the unsettling tension that drives the entire film. What makes Let's Scare Jessica to Death so powerful isn't big flashy scares. It's the atmosphere. The farmhouse and its surroundings are shot in this eerie, dreamlike way where even silence feels threatening. The soundtrack, filled with hushed voices and strange noises, only makes you feel more trapped in Jessica's unraveling world. At its core, the film is about the fear of losing control of your own mind. The horror doesn't come from an external monster, but from not knowing whether what you're experiencing is real. Lampert's performance nails this. Her fragile, haunted presence keeps you hooked and unsettled from start to finish. By the time the credits roll, the film doesn't give you easy answers. Instead, it leaves you with a lingering unease, the kind that sticks with you long after. Let's Scare Jessica to Death is one of those quiet horror gems that proves you don't need buckets of gore to terrify. All it takes is mood, paranoia, and the terrifying possibility that the real horror is in your own head. The Severed Arm, 1973. Survival can push people to unimaginable extremes, and The Severed Arm, directed by Tom Alderman, explores just how far desperation can go. The film begins with 6 friends exploring a remote cave. When a collapse traps them underground for 2 weeks, hunger and fear push them to a horrifying decision. They draw straws to decide who will sacrifice a limb to survive. Jeff is the unlucky one, and his arm is amputated. Moments later, they are rescued, but they agree to lie about the incident, claiming it was an accident. Fast forward 5 years, and the consequences of that desperate choice come back to haunt them. The friends start receiving mysterious threats, and one by one, they face chilling attacks. Jeff, now disfigured and filled with rage, emerges as a force of vengeance, determined to make the others pay for their betrayal. The cast, including Deborah Wally as Teddy Rogers, Paul Carr as Sergeant, Mark Richards, and David G. Cannon as Jeff, bring the tension to life, particularly as the story weaves between past trauma and present-day horror. Each character's guilt and fear are palpable, heightening the suspense and making their survival feel increasingly uncertain. While the film operates on a low budget, it uses its limitations to create a tense, unsettling atmosphere. The amputation scene is shocking without being overly graphic, and the score keeps the tension tight, enhancing the suspense of Jeff's calculated revenge. The story isn't just about physical horror, it's about the psychological cost of choices made in desperation and the long shadows they cast. The Severed Arm may not be the most polished slasher of its era, but its originality and moral complexity give it a lasting impact. It's a film that lingers in your mind, forcing viewers to consider how far they might go to survive and the potential consequences of betrayal. For fans of psychological horror, intertwined with slasher thrills, this is a haunting and thought-provoking watch. Tourist Trap, 1979. Tourist Trap is a surreal and unsettling horror film that plays with the line between reality and illusion. Directed by David Schmoller, this 1979 movie follows a group of young travelers who find themselves stranded near a remote roadside museum filled with mannequins that feel far too lifelike. The story begins when the group's car breaks down on a lonely stretch of highway. They stumble upon the museum, run by the eerie and unsettling Chuck Connors. At first, it seems like a quirky roadside attraction, but the atmosphere quickly shifts as the travelers realize that the mannequins aren't as inanimate as they appear. Strange occurrences escalate, tension mounts, and one by one, the group becomes trapped in a nightmarish situation they can't escape. What makes Tourist Trap so memorable is its blend of psychological horror and supernatural eeriness. The film leans heavily on suspense rather than gore, using clever camera angles, lighting, and sound design to create a constant sense of unease. The mannequins themselves are a brilliant source of dread, their lifeless eyes and frozen expressions keeping both the characters and viewers on edge. The performances help elevate the tension, with Connor's portrayal of the sinister Slauson providing a perfect anchor for the film's strange, dreamlike horror. The young travelers react with believable fear and confusion, which grounds the more surreal elements and makes the danger feel real. By the climax, Tourist Trap delivers a series of inventive, tense sequences that combine supernatural suspense with psychological terror. The story's eerie, almost hypnotic quality leaves a lingering sense of disorientation and fear, making it a standout among late 70s horror films. For fans of atmospheric horror that blends suspense, surrealism, and inventive scares, Tourist Trap is a hidden gem. It's the kind of film that stays with you, making you second-guess the safety of mannequins long after the credits roll. Messiah of Evil, 1973. Messiah of Evil is one of those rare cult horror films that feels less like a traditional story and more like a fever dream. Directed by Willard Huyck and Gloria Katz, the movie drops you into the lonely seaside town of Point Dune, where a young woman named Arletty arrives searching for her missing father. From the start, something feels off. The town is strangely quiet, its few remaining residents acting as if they're under some kind of spell. Arletty starts to uncover pieces of a disturbing mystery. Her father's cryptic journals, bizarre paintings, and whispers of an ancient prophecy tied to the ocean itself. What really makes Messiah of Evil stand out isn't just the plot, but the mood it creates. The film has this dreamlike, almost hypnotic quality. Scenes drift from one unsettling moment to another, strangers standing silently on the beach at night, blood-red skies, or a chilling sequence inside a movie theater that builds to one of the film's most unforgettable shocks. Mariana Hill is great as Arletty, playing a character who's constantly caught between logic and madness. Around her, the supporting cast feels just as strange, Michael Greer as the enigmatic drifter Tom, and Elisha Cook Jr., who seems to know more than he's letting on. Like a lot of 70s horror, the film mixes supernatural dread with social unease. It's not about quick scares, but about atmosphere and the creeping sense that you've stepped into a nightmare you can't wake from. Messiah of Evil may not be as well known as other cult horror films of its era, but for those who discover it, it sticks. It's eerie, surreal, and full of imagery that stays with you long after the credits roll. Beyond the Door, aka The Devil Within Her, 1974. Back in the 1970s, after The Exorcist took the world by storm, a wave of possession movies followed. One of the most infamous is Beyond the Door, directed by Ovidio G. Assanitis. Released in 1974, this Italian-American production leans into the same themes of demonic control and family unraveling, but it has its own strange energy that helped it carve out cult status. The story follows Jessica Barrett, played by Juliette Mills, a young woman in San Francisco who suddenly finds herself under the influence of a dark force during her pregnancy. At first, it's little things, odd behavior, violent outbursts, but soon it's clear she's being overtaken by something evil. Her husband Robert, played by Gabriele Lavia, is caught in the middle, trying to protect their kids, while Jessica becomes less and less herself. Richard Johnson shows up as Dimitri, a mysterious man who seems like he's there to help, but his real intentions are questionable from the start. What makes Beyond the Door memorable isn't just the possession sequences, though it delivers plenty of creepy faces, demonic voices, and supernatural chaos. It's the weird little touches. Jessica's kids, for example, have some of the strangest, almost comedic dialogue you'll hear in a horror movie, and it gives the film this bizarre tone where you're not sure if you're supposed to be scared or laughing. That offbeat mix has helped it stand out from being just another Exorcist knockoff. Warner Brothers even sued the filmmakers, claiming it borrowed too heavily from their hit, but the controversy only fueled its reputation. Audiences were curious, and over time, the film developed a loyal following among fans of Italian horror and campy cult cinema. It's not a polished movie. The pacing is uneven, and some scenes are unintentionally funny. But that's exactly why people still talk about it today. Beyond the Door is one of those so bizarre it works horror relics from the 70s, a mix of possession chills, family drama, and oddball moments that stick in your memory long after the credits roll. The Witch Who Came from the Sea, 1976. The Witch Who Came from the Sea explores how trauma can fester and shape a person in terrifying ways. Directed by Matt Cimber, the film follows Molly, played by Millie Perkins, a woman struggling to navigate adulthood while haunted by a childhood marked by abuse and neglect. As the story unfolds, Molly's inner pain begins to surface in dark and violent ways. She embarks on a murder spree, targeting men who she feels have wronged her, and the film blends elements of horror with psychological drama. It's less about jump scares and more about the unsettling weight of a mind twisted by past trauma. Cimber's direction, alongside Robert Tom's screenplay, creates a surreal, dreamlike atmosphere that keeps the audience on edge. The coastal settings are captured in all their gritty, windswept eeriness, emphasizing the isolation and emotional turbulence that Molly experiences. Millie Perkins delivers a layered performance, portraying Molly's vulnerability and simmering rage with quiet intensity. The film's shocking moments are punctuated by a sense of melancholy and unease, challenging conventional horror tropes and giving the story a reflective, almost poetic edge. While it courted controversy upon release for its graphic and psychologically intense content, the film stands out in the exploitation genre as something more introspective and disturbing than many of its contemporaries. It's a story about the long shadow of trauma, the complexities of vengeance, and the thin line between victim and perpetrator. By the end, The Witch Who Came from the Sea leaves a lasting impression. It's haunting, thought-provoking, and deeply unsettling. A film that lingers in your mind as you reflect on Molly's journey and the darkness that can arise when pain goes unresolved. Symptoms, 1974. Symptoms is one of those haunting psychological horror films that creeps under your skin slowly, almost without you realizing it. Directed by José Ramón Larraz, the story follows Helen, played by Angela Pleasance, who invites her friend Anne to spend some time with her in a sprawling but isolated English country mansion. At first, everything seems quiet and almost idyllic, but that calm doesn't last. From the moment Anne arrives, it's clear something isn't quite right. Helen's behavior is strange, shifting from warmth to coldness in an instant, and the house itself feels weighed down by secrets. The woods surrounding the estate add to the atmosphere, beautiful but oppressive, almost as if they're hiding something sinister. What makes Symptoms so effective is the way it builds unease through suggestion rather than spectacle. The tension grows out of small details. An odd look, a sudden mood swing, a shadow moving in the background. Angela Pleasance gives a mesmerizing performance, her fragile voice and unsettling presence pulling the viewer into Helen's disturbed world. As the days pass, Anne starts to uncover pieces of Helen's past, and it becomes clear that the mansion holds dark memories of betrayal, loss, and obsession. The line between reality and delusion blurs, and what begins as a quiet retreat spirals into something far more disturbing. Larraz's direction emphasizes atmosphere over shock. Long silences, the muted sounds of nature, and the slow pacing combine to create a sense of dread that lingers. When violence does break through, it feels all the more shocking because of the quiet that surrounds it. By the end, Symptoms leaves you with the unsettling sense that you've spent time inside a mind unraveling. It's a film that doesn't just scare, it unsettles, sticking with you long after it's over. For fans of psychological horror, it's a hidden gem, rich in atmosphere and dripping with unease. The Child, 1977. The Child is a slow-burning, unsettling horror that plays with the idea that innocence can hide something truly sinister. Directed by Robert Voskanian, the story follows Elysiane, a young woman who takes a job as a housekeeper at a remote farmhouse, tasked with looking after an 11-year-old girl named Rosalie. At first, Rosalie seems like any other child, quiet and polite, but it doesn't take long for Elysiane to notice something off. The girl's behavior is odd, her world filled with strange rituals and shadowy companions that don't quite seem human. As Elysiane digs deeper, she discovers that Rosalie's mother has recently died under mysterious circumstances, and that the child has a terrifying connection to the undead. The film thrives on atmosphere. The isolated farmhouse, the creaking floors, and the eerie sound design all contribute to a growing sense of unease. Even though the performances feel a bit uneven at times, the tension keeps you on edge because you never quite know what Rosalie is capable of. As the story unfolds, Elysiane is drawn deeper into Rosalie's dark world. The child's supernatural influence becomes impossible to ignore, and the line between reality and horror blurs. The climax is intense, revealing just how malevolent Rosalie truly is and cementing the film's eerie reputation. The Child may not be widely known, but it captures a distinctive 1970s low-budget horror vibe. Its combination of psychological tension and supernatural dread makes it a fascinating watch for fans of vintage horror looking for something offbeat and haunting. By the end, the film leaves you with that lingering feeling that even the most innocent faces can hide terrifying secrets, a darkness that stays with you long after the screen goes black. Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, aka The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, 1974. In the mid-70s, when zombie movies were starting to claw their way into horror history, Spain and Italy teamed up to give us Let Sleeping Corpses Lie. Directed by Jorge Grau, it takes the classic undead formula and gives it a fresh twist with a dose of environmental paranoia. The story follows George, played by Ray Lovelock, who's just trying to make his way through the English countryside. A chance run-in with a young woman named Edna, played by Christina Galbeau, ends up pulling him into something far darker than either of them could have expected. Local scientists are experimenting with a new kind of technology that uses ultrasonic radiation to kill insects. But of course, this being horror, that little invention has a side effect. It wakes up the dead. Suddenly, the quiet green countryside is crawling with flesh-hungry zombies. George and Edna find themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time, getting blamed for a string of murders while the real culprits, the undead, keep multiplying. Standing in their way is an inspector, played by Arthur Kennedy, whose arrogance and prejudice only make things worse. His refusal to see what's really happening turns him into almost as big a threat as the zombies themselves. What sets this one apart from other zombie flicks of the time is how it mixes social commentary with its scares. Grau uses the film to talk about pollution, technology, and the dangers of messing with nature. The English countryside looks gorgeous on screen, but it's constantly contrasted with gore and decay, driving home the film's ecological warning. And speaking of gore, the zombie attacks here are brutal and memorable, with some of the best practical effects of the era. It doesn't shy away from showing the flesh-eating horror, but it's never just shock for shock's sake. Everything ties back into that uneasy balance between humanity, science, and nature. Let Sleeping Corpses Lie is often compared to Romero's Night of the Living Dead, and while the influence is obvious, it brings its own flavor to the genre. It's atmospheric, it's unsettling, and it has just enough brains, no pun intended, to make it more than just another zombie movie. Nearly 50 years later, it still holds up as one of the standout Euro horror takes on the undead. If you're a fan of zombie cinema and you haven't checked it out, this one's absolutely worth digging up. The Manitou, 1978. The Manitou is a supernatural horror film directed by William Girdler that blends Native American mysticism with campy thrills. Released in 1978, this 104-minute film features a unique storyline where a psychic's girlfriend discovers that a lump on her neck is actually the reincarnation of a 400-year-old demonic spirit. With an IMDb rating of 5.4, the film stars Tony Curtis as Harry Erskine, a con artist psychic who finds himself entangled in a battle against a powerful evil force. Supporting performances by Susan Strasberg and Michael Ansara add depth to the cast, while Burgess Meredith delivers a memorable turn as a quirky professor. The film's premise unfolds as Strasberg's character, Karen, experiences increasingly bizarre and terrifying events related to the growth on her neck. As the situation escalates, it becomes clear that an ancient spirit is attempting to return to the physical world, leading to a series of bizarre and often humorous confrontations. Girdler's direction is a mix of serious horror elements and unintentional comedy, making it a cult classic among fans of 70s cinema. The visual effects and practical effects, while dated, contribute to the film's charm, creating memorable and outrageous sequences, including a climactic showdown that takes the audience into a surreal confrontation with the supernatural. The Manitou stands out for its unique blend of genres and its exploration of themes like reincarnation and spiritual conflict. It's an entertaining ride filled with absurdity and unexpected moments, perfect for those who appreciate campy horror. As you watch, you'll find yourself immersed in a bizarre world where the lines between reality and the supernatural blur, leaving you with a mix of laughter and chills. And there you have it. 10 unsettling, offbeat, and sometimes downright bizarre horror films from the 1970s that never quite made the mainstream, but still found their way onto dusty shelves and late-night broadcasts. Some are eerie, some are outrageous, and some feel like fever dreams captured on film. But that's what makes them unforgettable. If you enjoyed this dive into the darker corners of horror history, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment with your favorite overlooked 70s horror gem. You can explore even more VHS obscurities over at our online store, ejectmedia.etsy.com. And remember, always be kind and rewind because every movie is someone's favorite.